Greg, thank you so much for having me here. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Errol, the America's GTM product manager for Studio, and that will also a part of the team for Autopilot as well as Scout. Just really quickly before jumping in, I do want to call out the gratitude I feel for being on this call, for who we're presenting to, and also to John as well as Greg here on the team, as I've worked with them for a number of years and seen the impact that they drive. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. The people on this call serve missions where reliability, accountability, and time matter. Yet a meaningful part of the workday is still consumed by tasks that not only require your best judgment, but also the ability to find context, entering the same information more than once, and moving package or checking status multiple times repetitively, day in and day out. And that's where I want to begin. Not with an AI model, not with a feature list, with a human, rather with the human capability and capacity. AI has entered a new phase, and we've been in it for a while now. And beyond drafting and summarizing, agents and workflows can be used and designed to use as approvals for knowledge, call tools, and to complete defined tasks. The controls, review points, and accountability to have and to be a part of a design system. That creates real possibility, and innovation can happen closer to work. Processes can become more responsive. People can apply more of their expertise to decisions that really matter and spend their energy where it really counts. Possibility is not the same as the outcome. Every scenario still has to fit the mission, the data, the target, the environment, and the required level of human review with human in the loop. I want to explore 3 ideas with you today: ubiquitous innovation, agentifying the business process, and AI in the flow of human ambition. Together today, they point to a simple proposition. Technology should make human judgment more consequential. The mission keeps growing, the days do not. Requirements expand, threats evolve, oversight remains essential, the hours available to respond are fixed. So organizations build workarounds. A person copies information between systems, a package waits for the right inbox, an analyst spends the morning collecting inputs before analysis can begin, and critical context lives with experienced people who have become the unofficial help desk for everyone around them. Think of those around you who've been in their role or their organization, teams, for 10, 20, or even 30 years. That work is not meaningless. Some of that exists for good reasons. It may carry a control, preserve, an audit trail, or to protect a decision. The discipline is to understand the process before changing it. Which steps require judgment? Which steps establish accountability? And which steps are coordination that could be structured, assisted, or automated? That is truly the capacity question that we're addressing today. This is not a promise to remove every manual step, and it is not a headcount equation. It is a design question. How much more mission value could your team create if we took routine coordination and drove more impact for you to do more with less? For the government, even a modest improvement can matter. A review begins earlier, and exceptions surfaces sooner. An experienced person spends more time on the decision and less time on assembling the file. It's the opportunity right in front of us today. The most important shift is from assistance to action. The first wave of generative AI made drafting, summarizing, and finding information far easier. Those capabilities remain valuable. Agents and workflows add another dimension. They can be designed to complete defined tasks using the instructions, approved knowledge, and tools that you provide. And here is a practical model. Copilot is the human interface. It gives people a place to ask, direct review, and decide and support experiences. Agents can execute approved work. They can use connected knowledge and tools to complete a task and return the result or an exception for human review. Copilot Studio is the low-code, no-code platform for building and managing agents and workflows, connecting them from an organization's data and systems, testing their behavior, and monitoring outcomes. Consider a simple distinction. A conversational experience that explains a policy. An agent can be designed to begin an approved action, route work, and surface an exception. What's possible depends on how the solution is designed, what it's licensed and connected to, and the cloud environment where it runs. What matters, especially for this environment and for this audience. The principle is still clear. When AI can participate in a process, we have to design the work, the controls, and the human decision all together. I use the phrase, and it's not one that I created, it's one led by Microsoft, called ubiquitous innovation, to describe what happens when improvement becomes a repeatable organizational capability. For years, technology change often began with a central program and a small pilot. That model can produce value, but it does not always reach the places where everyday work breaks down. Ubiquitous innovation starts closer to the mission. First, it happens where work happens. The contracting professional, logistician, analyst, and program team can all identify process friction that a central team may never see. Second, more people can participate in building. Low-code, no-code, natural language tools allow domain experts to continue alongside professional developers in IT. The strongest solutions still combine mission knowledge, technical depth, security, and operational ownership. And third, governance begins with the design. Identity, data access, connector policies, testing, monitoring, and human review should be considered before a solution reaches production. Ubiquitous does not mean uncontrolled. It means useful ideas can move from isolated pilots into normal operations through a governed, repeatable path, driving impact. The goal is not to celebrate the number of agents created. The goal is to make improvements so that your lives can be easier to drive the scale that we know the government, the US government, is working to achieve, and where success is measured by output. When that discipline becomes normal, practical improvements can compound across the organization. The second idea is to agentify the business process. The phrase matters because it shifts the conversation away from adding chatbots to existing processes, and it asks us to examine the process itself. Most organizations rely on systems of record. They hold authoritative information to preserve the history of the work. They're essential. A system of action builds on that foundation. It uses agents, workflows, tools, skills, and human decisions to move approved work forward. The examples on this slide are illustrative of that. Imagine an agent gathered approved inputs from several systems and are presenting exceptions for review. In another scenario, a workflow routes a package according to approved rules, tracks elapsed time, and surfaces a delay. For an analyst, an agent may help prepare the inputs so more time is available for evaluation. In every case, accountability remains with people and the organization. The process owner defines the objective. Security and compliance teams define the boundaries. Technical teams validate the architecture, and users review results at the points the mission requires. Agentification is the redesign of work around agents, workflows, tools, and human decisions. The question is not, where can I add AI? The question is, how should this process work now that approved software can participate in more of it to get more done effectively with the outcomes we're seeking? The third idea is AI in the flow of human ambition. This is the human center of the conversation. AI doesn't carry the mission, accept accountability, or bring decades of lived context into a decision. People do. You do. The value of an experienced professional is not the number of fields they can populate. It's the judgment to recognize when an exception matters, when a rule is insufficient, and when the consequences require a different path. Much of the judgment is contextual and tactic. That is why human review is not a temporary bridge. It is part of a responsible system design. When agents handle well-defined coordination and retrieval tasks, people can spend more time setting direction, evaluating results, resolving exceptions, and improving the process. That is what it means to scale expertise responsibly. For individuals, the opportunity is practical. It can create more capacity for judgment, service, and leadership. It develops a highly valued skill, the ability to identify a process, define the outcome, and design the right human and agent roles, and evaluate what changed. And it creates evidence for impact when the improvement is measured against a clear baseline. The agent is not the accountable expert, you still are. The purpose of the technology is to help your expertise reach further while preserving the judgment, responsibility, and trust the mission requires, which is done by you. So why Microsoft? Why CompuSoft, right? But why Microsoft? The answer does not depend on naming a permanent best model. Models and capabilities will continue to evolve, as millions of models have over the last number of years. The Microsoft advantage is connecting across the experiences, data, tools, and controls that support the work on a fully holistic platform. Copilot Studio is a graphical low-code environment for building and managing agents and workflows. It can connect to organizational data and systems that publish and support channels. When we think of the Power Platform, we have the ability to scale with as much security as we want across the entire organization, from apps, automations, web portals, with the ability to agentify and scale what you're accomplishing and looking to do as you modernize to further to strengthen the government. Microsoft 365, GitHub, Microsoft Foundry provide additional experiences and develop paths for different users and scenarios. The opportunity is to connect those capabilities around the process instead of forcing every scenario into one tool. For this audience, environments matter. Microsoft publishes separate documentation for commercial, GCC, and GCC high environments because we value your security. Feature availability and compliance commitments vary. Some capabilities are available commercially. They're not always available for both government and commercial environments, and that's intentional. That means the target architecture and features should be validated before implementation, which is where your Microsoft account team and our highly valued partners such as CompuSoft come in and help assist make sure you have the right tools, technologies, people, and processes in the right place. And that is the right standard, connecting the platform where it creates value and verifying every capability against the environment where the mission will run successfully. Now let's focus on how to orient your mind moving forward. Before anyone builds, define 4 things. What's your baseline? What's the target outcome? What's the accountability owner? Who is it? And the date when the result will be reviewed. That measures this slide, and here are the examples. Time returned can be measured by comparing efforts before and after within a defined process and measurement window. Cycle time can track elapsed time for an award, case, review, or maintenance action. Backlog health can include queue size, age, service levels. Production measures can include approved usage, quality, exception ratings, user adoption, and operational reliability. And the right measure depends on the mission and the process, what outcomes you're looking to drive. And it's important to be disciplined about the words. Time saved requires a before and after measure. Transformation requires approved production use. Scale requires an operating model that survives personal change. This discipline protects the customer. This protects you, the partner. This also protects Microsoft as we all scale and grow together. It also makes the story stronger and more compelling. Clear baseline turns a terminology conversation into an operational decision. Without a baseline in owner, you can show activity. You cannot show whether the mission outcome was improved, though. That is the standard I would use for every idea that comes out of today's workshop. And so let me close with 3 ideas on the right. Ubiquitous innovation means creating a governed path for practical improvement where mission work happens. Agentifying the process means moving from passive systems of record towards coordinated systems of action and the people retaining accountability. AI in the flow of ambition means scaling expertise. We're preserving judgment. And here's my ask for the rest of the workshop. Choose one real process, not one broad mission, and not a hypothetical one. Choose one process on your team where you're an expert, your team is the expert, and where you understand it well enough to map. Identify the outcome, the baseline, and the decision that must remain with the person. Then build only what the environment, controls, and available capabilities support. And with that being said, again, CompuSoft to the US government here, thank you so much for having me and for allowing me to share some of our thoughts with you. With that, Tad, I'll pass it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Errol. Hello, everyone. Give me one moment to share my screen, and I will carry on with getting into just a smidge about Power Platform, but most of it, we're going to focus on a couple of components of Power Platform. And I'm stalling here a second while I find the share. Oh my, I don't have the share button. Greg, any chance you can make me a presenter? But I'll just talk for a moment. So I apologize for it's always a little bit of a challenge. And then with government and federal and military, there's some more restrictions oftentimes in place. I see that in the commercial world as well. We do have a variety of ways in which you can get into an environment. Sometimes the organization itself, and it looked like some of you do have some access through your own organization's licensing to get into parts of this. So normally what I do when I get into the hands-on labs is I demo a bit, highlight maybe some gotchas, and then just let you go into it. Today, I'll probably, since some of you aren't able to do everything, I'll do more demo. And then have some time for lab that will also be kind of a break time as well. So like labs and break. And then hopefully, if you are able to create a trial, then you can go through the labs on your own. And I have more labs than what I'm just going to share with you today. And so hopefully you'll be able to get into those. There's also lots of videos available and that sort of thing if you check out it on YouTube and such. Let's see, what else can I say?
Hey, Tad, really quickly here. I mean, you are a presenter at part of the meeting. I just checked as part of that in the upper right-hand corner, I mean, you see where it says end event or leave or share or microphone?
Yeah, I don't have the share button.
Okay. You may have to drop and then potentially come right back in, Ted.
Okay. All right. Okay. So talk amongst yourselves for about 30 seconds and I'll be right back.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll just give Tad just a quick second there, but thank you, Errol, for that presentation. Very, very helpful, insightful. As we kind of like look at some of these things, I'm just kind of reading some of the chats. I mean, like I mentioned, we will be recording this and we'll send it out to everybody. So once you guys, get into an environment or can look this up, you can follow along there. But also, I mean, a lot of this is also going to be not only from a Copilot perspective, but from a Power Platform. So we're going to be covering a lot of those best practices. Tad's going to kind of take you through some of those labs. So, and again, just being able to really kind of visualize some different use cases that we're going to build out towards it. All right, Tad, looks like you're back in.
Yep.
And we're starting to see some things here.
Yep. 1 second. I do have one short video, so I need to hit that button to share with sound. So I'll try that again. I really have done this before. Been doing it for a very long time, but every now and then you still just have some little quirk. Thanks for bearing with me 1 second. And then like any any SaaS application, the UI changes. The UI continues to change, and jeepers creepers, I am just failing here today. Let's try that one more time. Share the right screen, share with content, audio. There we go. Okay. Whew. Thank you all. All right. So again, my name is Tad. I'm with Microsoft. I focus on the business applications. There's lots and lots that make up that. Many, many years ago, we started with what we called CRM, and it's still kind of a term used throughout the industry. And that's really where Power Apps evolved from. And then we added a tool. Well, Power BI was also being developed as well. That's been around a long time. Sometimes people kind of think of that as a little bit separate. And part of that is because it's now considered a workload of a broader data intelligence management reporting platform called Fabric, Microsoft Fabric, and it's a workload in there. However, it's a free download that you can run and create reports, and then you could share with your mates and so forth. Power Automate began as Microsoft Flow, and then subsequently renamed to Power Automate, and that's our workflow automation. Won't be focusing much on that today. However, it dovetails beautifully with agents, and so a lot of the work we do and a lot of the automation is handled by agents leveraging Power Automate to do some of that grunt work. And of course, all of the connectors. So connectors are a big deal because they connect one application to another or a service. So maybe you're working within your apps, but maybe a service calls maybe some other website, some website outside of maybe even the federal or as a whole, or perhaps it's looking at some third-party tool, maybe Google products, maybe AWS. And so we have connectors that allow you connect and do interactions with those other data sources without having to do that work. 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that would have required a pro developer to do all of that. The one on the far right, Power Pages, I'm not going to get into that today either, but that is a platform where you can create websites, and it's all no code, low code, where you literally can create a external facing or internal facing website that could have a lot of traditional things you expect on a website, but then also things that you can interact with other people within the organization or outside your organization. And all of that sits on, as I mentioned, the data connectors, and then Dataverse is our database within Power Platform. And we won't really know or care that it's there as we're working in it today, but in many cases, that's obviously very important. And then all of that is consumed through Dynamics 365 or Office 365, could be through Teams or Outlook or SharePoint or other tools you're using. And then Azure is our cloud platform on which all of this relies. So today I'm going to focus on how Copilot helps with all of this. Microsoft 365 Copilot. Maybe you've interacted with that. That is where you can query. You can ask questions. You can create agents there. You can look across all of the data within your organization, and we call that the Microsoft Graph, where it knows your email correspondence, it knows the files you've worked with, it knows the sharing you've done, but it still stays within the guardrails of your IT. And then what we'll look at mostly today are Power Apps and agents. And so apps are, this is where you are defining data and the rules and decisions, maybe managing the processes that require human oversight. And then the apps are where the people can manage the workflows, review outcomes, handle exceptions, apply judgment. You might hear the terms, a new-ish term called a headless app. It's not nefarious. It just means that instead of logging into a traditional line of business application like SAP or any of the Dynamics products and looking up records and updating records, you might instead have your agents doing that work and interacting with the human with that information. For many years, a lot of my customer training would be with salespeople. And salespeople hate to enter data. And I'm sure some of you would concur with that, whether you're a salesperson or not. And data entry has always been kind of a painful thing. And sometimes the apps make it easier. Sometimes they make it kludgier. I'm sure you've all been on a mobile app or on a website where things just don't flow or work great. And it's annoying, especially me as a developer. It drives me crazy. And but that's where agents can come in, and instead of necessarily going to an app and doing all of that data entry and looking up information and such, you just interact with an agent, and then the agent puts it in the right place. It knows all of your work IQ. That's kind of a term we've created that talks about that intelligence around all the work that we are doing. And then those agents can help us manage the workflows and have traceable actions and be reliable. So our three things we're going to look at today: Copilot, apps, and agents. So Copilot, again, like I said, and some of you may have used other products like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. And what Copilot does is it sits on those, and the advantage that Copilot has is all of that business knowledge and management. If you're working directly with OpenAI, yes, it knows all of the public information, all of that's accessible, but it doesn't know your work information, because you don't want to expose your work information to the public, right? I think that's an obvious one. So that's how Copilot can help. Plus, you can select, and we'll see this when we get into the Copilot Studio stuff. Copilot can leverage any model that your organization allows, be it OpenAI or Anthropic, like Claude models. I tend to now default to Claude personally, but all of those have many models that do different things well, and speed is also a consideration as well. Okay, so with Copilot, again, I'm going to focus mostly on apps and Copilot Studio, but there is still Copilot kind of all around us. If your organization uses the Microsoft platform for, your productivity apps such as Outlook and PowerPoint and Word and Excel and so on, then Copilot is a very natural fit, because again, it can interact with all that. It understands your work. It knows you, knows your role within your organization. You might even then leverage co-work, which Errol mentioned a bit about as well. And this is our newer, more autonomous capability to actually come. It sits on Claude's co-work, by the way. And this is where you can really begin to get into having the agents working on your behalf. And like I said, you can enable the model of choice that you want. And then all of this is built on our security management, our compliance. A lot of times I talk about what we call Agent 365, and we won't get into it today, but this is more of an administrative task. But what it means is, regardless of where people create their agents or their flows or their apps, we have a single control plane to manage all of those, whether they make them in Microsoft 365 Copilot or in Copilot Studio, like we're going to look at, or maybe pro developers using AI Foundry, or your own platform or another third-party platform that you might be developing your pro agents. And they all have visibility by IT, and who can manage the kind of acknowledgement of them, and then review them for security, and then publish them out, whether it's to certain people within the organization or the entire maybe the entire group. And it will also give them monitoring capability for security alerts, or or protect. Maybe there's maybe an agent is accessing somehow. It got access to data that it should not have, and this will all monitor that. And you can have it automatically shut that agent down, and then allow the owner or whoever is responsible for that agent to do their work and resolve. So if you think of the kind of the core apps that might be used within the organization, Dynamics 365 or Microsoft 365 or Power Platform, or maybe third party like SAP or Oracle or whatever, we can work with all of those and integrate with all of those, and our agents can interact and help us make those decisions and do the work where it needs to be done. And there are some great agents available kind of out of the box, if you will, such as researcher or qualification agents or custom agents. And then there's a lot of partners that create agents, especially for their own applications, or as a partner such as CompuSoft, they're helping organizations deploy and build agents that meet their requirements. So throughout some of my slides, I've got kind of an example of this new hire onboarding process, and there's lots to be done, and some of it is very routine and tedious. So it can help with providing the proper information to new hires, and maybe it's new developers, and you want to make sure that they know what they can do or can't do within the organization. The access to a developer environment, which, by the way, is if you are a licensed Power Platform, Power Apps user, we allow every licensed user to have their own development environment. Now it is up to IT within your, whoever your IT admins, that they potentially block that or don't advertise it. But that is definitely another way that you can work and practice and learn. Now, there are some things, by the way, that Agent 365 can set up and I talk to security admins a lot, and I explain to them that we have these policy rules. We call them DLPs, data loss prevention policies. And what you do is you say, okay, out of all of these potential connectors, 1,500, whatever connectors, other data sources, other APIs, websites, line of business apps, personal apps, whatever, you can say, okay, block them all, but then allow these 10. Maybe I want them to allow email, probably, maybe SharePoint access, maybe some kind of analytics app, that sort of thing, that are approved applications within the organization. And then they don't have to worry about someone getting into somewhere where they're not supposed to get to. And sometimes security admins go, oh, really? Okay, that's great. Well, maybe I can loosen the security a little bit because I have control over it. So anyway, okay, so here's our example. Maybe there's a welcome app. So maybe a new developer gets hired, they get an email, giving them links, giving them learning tools, giving them information about what they can do, and here are their tools for them. And then there may be like a hiring manager maybe go through kind of an onboarding setup, and they may check the Copilot Studio agent will ensure that they've gone through their checklist of policies and met all the requirements. And then as the HR continues that process in Power Apps or with the agent, that will help kind of reduce those errors, make the onboarding happen faster, because the faster you have a new hire onboarded, the more they can be a productive member of the team. And then perhaps there's equipment or access or training that needs to be completed. I don't know about you, but I have required training I need to do every month, every quarter, and that's all managed, and we have agents that support with that and monitor that, and then we have dashboards that give us that reporting. Okay, so again, I'm not really going to get into Microsoft 365 Copilot, but what I was doing there was setting up kind of a scenario that I'm going to go through slides as we talk about Power Apps, and then we'll do some Power Apps labs, I'll do a lot of demonstration, and then get into Copilot Studio. And throughout, somewhere in there, we'll take a break too, because you want to listen to me that long. Okay, so with Power Apps, now, a lot of times when people hear about Power Apps, they think of the newer version of Power Apps we call Canvas apps, and that's actually what we will work with today. Part of it is a little less underload overhead, because the other type of Power Apps, model-driven apps, which has been around since the early 2000s, requires Dataverse and a bit more setup. Anyway, whereas Canvas apps can connect to any data that's allowed. And my example will be, we're going to start with template, and then I'm going to have a Excel example that can just give you the data to build on, so you can start to see how this might work. And what I'll do is I'll demo the labs, a couple of them fairly completely, and then the bigger lab, I'll get started in it, and then I'll show you more of a done version, and then we'll probably take a break, and then we'll come back with Copilot Studio. So with these Power Apps, you are able to build that interface, the interaction where users need to do their work. And this will bring this kind of brings the data and the logic and the process all together, instead of having maybe a scattered spreadsheets or emails or data in Teams or in reporting. And whereas with Power Apps working as kind of the front door for that can help manage the security as well as the proper people using the proper tools. And so with Power Apps now, like everything else we're doing, they can be very AI run. So like, for instance, the way traditional development, maybe you've been writing code, or with tools such as Microsoft low code capability like Canvas apps, it's a lot of drag and drop. Now, when I say no code, low code. No code would be like you're literally just dragging components and working with it. Think of it as PowerPoint or like simple uh, uh, Excel data files. But then once you get into maybe writing a function for Excel or a function in your Power App, Canvas app, that's what we'd call the low code. So it you wouldn't be termed a pro code by any means, but it gives you the capability that pro code developers have. And then what you're seeing here in this animation is kind of a step further with that, and we call it vibe coding. And that's not our term; it's a broad industry term. You've probably heard it, where you're just talking to the platform, in this case, Power Apps, and you're describing what you want the app to do, and then it begins building it for you, and then you continue to iterate with it, and it's really pretty amazing. I've been a developer for a long time, and what could be done now simply talking to Canvas apps for a bit of back and forth for an hour or so would have taken me at least a week. And yeah, I wasn't a great developer, but still, even a really fine pro developer, this would take a fair amount of time. Plus, with the Canvas apps, you have a breadth of capability around the user experience. One of my complaints sometimes when I work with a mobile app that I get off the store or whatever, and it might be kludgy or somebody's website, and it's just not a great experience. You feel like you're re-entering data, or maybe it doesn't do simple things like just formatting a phone number. And so those are the kinds of things that this will do for us natively. And it still all has the capability of ALM, application lifecycle management, which we weren't worried about today, but that would be like you might do your work in a dev environment, and then it needs to be cycled through into UAT and testing, and then finally to production. And that can all be automated too with our Power Platform pipelines, we call them, or even more robust would be Azure DevOps. I think this is a video I have. Let's try it. Yep.
Today, I want to show you something amazing, something you've not seen from Power Apps before.
Maybe thumbs up
Let's
if you can
jump
hear
right
it.
into with a prompt here at vibe.powerapps.com. What's awesome is this isn't like any vibe coding tool you've seen before. Here we can see I'm working with 4 agents: requirements agent, data agent, solutions agent, and the new agent on the team, the coding agent. The agents have immediately gotten to work breaking down my business problem and working through a multi-step set of tasks for me. As this builds, let's take a look at some of the code the coding agent is building. We have everything from design files that handle the layout and color system for the whole app, generated services, and lots of pages for the application. I'm excited to see what this app will look like. I've tried this a few times and there's always something new. Whilst the coding agent wraps up the first version of the app, let's take a look at what happened so far. If we look at the plan, we can see there are roles and jobs to be done. There's a data model that will support the whole business solution, and we'll jump into that in a moment. And a suite of technology that will also solve this business problem. Not just the app the coding agent is working on right now, but AI agents, workflows, and other assets that are necessary to support the business problem. We talked briefly about the data model. Let's jump in. Here we can see there are a number of tables that have been built out with relationships, everything from loop steps to employees, job postings, applications. This is great. What's interesting here is from day one, this application is working on Dataverse. Dataverse is a fully managed and secure planet-scale data platform, a platform that easily supports hundreds of millions of monthly users. It looks like the coding agent is finalizing details. Let's see how the app is looking. I can hide the terminal. Have a look at the split view here. There we are. Wow, a whole app. We have active postings, applications, a Kanban board that we asked for, a great left nav. Let's check it out. We've got my applications with charts. We can manage the postings. Let's add a new posting maybe. This job title would
Ted, I think we lost audio.
It's like I can drag and drop on this board too, which is awesome. Just like low-code apps of before, we can use inline edits to make updates that we need. In this case, let me grab the hiring management header here. I'm going to go ahead and change that text color to purple. Maybe we'll make it a little bit more bold. That's great. I can continue to make these kind of edits over the app or work with my agents. For this example, let's jump into the data. We'll have a look at the loop steps that we have. We can see there's a number here, but I could ask the agents, are there other typical hiring stages that we don't have here? The agents can use the context, work with knowledge, and quickly reply that, hey, yes. There's actually a few things we could do. Background checks, final interviews, resume screening.
Okay, it sounds like audio keeps popping, so I think I'll just leave it at that. So the vibe coding, and I see a couple comments there. I love it. I think it's great. I do have, I don't know, this isn't the company line, but a little bit of caveat is I feel like it can allow for maybe sloppy development in that it may not always have the the nomenclature that you might want and so forth. So are we still getting audio and sound? I feel like I hung for a minute there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Ted. Yep.
Okay. All right. My apologies. We'll be sharing the slides so you can watch this on your own. So
today I want to show you something
directly. Oops, I didn't mean to start over again. And there's also lots of great other capabilities that you might create within your app. So here you can see this is one where it's very interactive. This is actually from one of our partners, Lumen, or one of our customers, Lumen. If any of you are in the Seattle area, you know who Lumen is with the Seahawks. And here we're able to interact with data in different visual ways. And yeah, now we're here into an app where there's a lot more. There might be data entry to be done, may drag files in, and then Copilot can work with those files and make some suggestions and update the information. So instead of having to enter everything by hand, this is doing a lot of that work for us. And there's even embedded in here that other interaction like chats and emails. And this is all native capability that can just simply added with the support of Copilot. And so it grabbed you. That was a little subtle change there. But from that incident report, it populated data for it. You can see kind of all the data went kind of blue there. And then there's in the upper right corner there's some suggestions from Copilot, and you might make use of that. And so then once that's done, it can be saved, you moved on, or maybe the agent does some other work for you, or you ask the agent to communicate this to the team. And then agents also helping us within the apps. We'll have things like tools. One term is called MCP server, Model Context Protocol. And these are essentially really sophisticated connectors to other data. So maybe it's your backend database. Maybe it's needs to provide some functions like create a record, edit a record, maybe send an email, or do some additional research for us, or send an HTTP request. There's all these other capabilities that our agents can call, and we call those tools. And then lastly here with Copilot in the apps, there's also really good reporting where we can interact with the data and Copilot could have done some things like in this example. We're still looking at this HR example where it's looking at your candidates and providing maybe an analysis, some summary, maybe issues you might have had with the hiring process or things you might be missing. And then some good numbers. Like here, it's showing how many people applied, how many were screened, how many were interviewed, and then to manage the process and make sure that it keeps moving forward, and also manage communication, because those candidates that are not hired, you want to make sure that they get notified, and it's just the good thing to do. All right, so take a look at the slide deck later. Lots of great animations, that video that unfortunately failed a little bit maybe. So let's get into demo and lab. So I'm going to demo for a little bit first, and then as I'm kind of getting set up here, I'll share links to the content because it's possible you may not have access to everything. So let me change my share. 1 second here. Okay. Now let's share different screen. Okay. All right. So let me do a little bit of navigation. Sometimes when you're learning something, when you're learning a new platform, or maybe you've been in it a bit and haven't done a lot yet, let me do just a little bit of navigation. So within Power Platform, there are several portals or pages. It's not really an app you're downloading and interacting with. It's really you're interacting with the pages, the websites. And so like for instance, this one is make.powerapps.com. So if you were able to create a trial, you would log in. If you're using a personal, you would use an in-private browser and go to make.powerapps.com. Now, it could be that it's going to prompt you for multi-factor authentication. Sometimes, like when I do trainings, I'll help people maybe turn that off if they don't need it, but other times it is required. And then once you're in there, all of the platforms, all of the tools, be it Power Apps or Power Platform or excuse me, Power Automate or Copilot Studio, will all have a kind of a similar look and feel, a similar navigation. So like for instance, if in the upper left corner, I click this waffle button, I could see other apps that I have. So like at the beginning, I mentioned Microsoft 365 and Microsoft 365 Copilot. And this you may or may not have within your organization, but this is where this is kind of that chat interface. You might do searching. You might look up information. I haven't done anything in this particular tenant, but this is where I might start to search. You might say, what is the policy around whatever, or how can I find whatever information? Or maybe it's just you're just curious about something, and this is where you can search for it. You can also you can create things. So you could create, maybe it's a Word document, maybe it's a presentation, and this can be that jumpstart. Now, yes, you could go to Word and use Copilot there, or go to PowerPoint, use Copilot there. This can be just kind of a point of entry to get started on that. And then same with apps as well. So any apps you have, so like for instance, I could come in here and I could click on maybe, select developer tools. I've got Power Pages available. Not a lot going on here in this particular tenant, but just gives you an idea of kind of getting started there. In fact, let me show that quick in another tenant where I do have more going on, just to give you an idea of what else there. Yeah, you can see I've done some other work here. So I might have a library of content. I might have a lot of search that I've been doing. You can see all my other searches going on. Researcher, this is a great tool for researching. And it can be, maybe look at all of my information and create a summary for it, or create a daily briefing of all of my data. And then more sophisticated than that, you could have Cowork do that for you on a daily basis. And it'll look through all of your information, it'll look through your email correspondence, your teams, still just what you have access to, and maybe generate some sort of plan for you. And then we can actually create agents here as well. We're going to look at that in Copilot Studio after a bit, but you can do that. And for instance, here I've created this one called project planning, and I created some prompts. So prompts, the term is it's a little not totally clear to everyone because it can be used differently in different scenarios. But in this context, a prompt is what you are asking of your agent, of your data model. And a lot of times when people create agents that they might share with other people, they say, hey, look at this prompt I created. It's for helping you create a project plan. And then they say, well, how do I do that? And so in this case, I've created some starter prompts. And then that way, the user, your colleague, whomever, could also use that agent, and they have a little bit of a starting point. It's like a step beyond a simple browser search. You go to your browser and you just start typing stuff to look at, and your traditional browser like Google is not going to come back and ask you further questions. And that's what Copilot is doing. It wants you to kind of expound on what you've done. So like, for instance, here I've got this one, create a project plan for, and then I could replace this client name with my client. And so I could say maybe Contoso. I know these aren't necessarily total examples for all of you, but gives you an idea of how you might, just create these prompts with your agent. And now what it's doing is it's looking up data I have about Contoso, in my case, and it's creating kind of this plan here. We're going to modernize their environment, unify their sales and Power Platform, and it builds all this stuff. And back in the day when guys like Greg and I were doing this for customers, oh my God, this would take days and days to generate this. But with the help of Copilot, it's building all this stuff out, these milestones, what we need to work for, key deliverables. And then it's asking me, okay, do you want to add tasks? Do you want to create a timeline chart? Do you want to summarize? Do you want to output this into a PowerPoint that then I can turn around and present to key stakeholders? So super cool. Just a little bit of a look at Microsoft 365. And it's kind of the simple version of creating an agent versus what we'll get into with Copilot Studio. All right, I'm going to jump back to this other environment, back to my Power Platform, Power Apps. So again, we've got, when we're working with Power Apps, we have just kind of some typical links along the side here. You would see that with Power Automate, with Copilot Studio, and so on. There's also, this is an important aspect depending upon how you've been able to spin this up, whether you were successfully able to create a trial, or if you have your organization. So here I am graciously enabled by CompuSoft with a environment here. You can see this environment has Dataverse. Sometimes environments maybe don't have Dataverse, and that's okay for what we're doing today. If you don't have Dataverse, that's fine. And then, like everything Microsoft, there's 14 ways of creating something. And so I could create apps by clicking Create. I could click on Apps and start there. There's also this New App option. And I'm going to show you a couple, and I'm going to share the links to the labs. Let me do that into the chat. And so what I've got here, and let me paste this. So this is a OneDrive repository. I do find once in a while that people don't have access. So what I'm also going to do is give you a link to a public site, call it MS Learn. So in this folder, I've got a bunch of labs that we're going to look at today. I've got Power Apps PA 1, 2, and 3, and then Copilot Studio apps. This coffee machine data is actually just an example spreadsheet I'm going to use, and I'll show you that. And it's also, any of these are also available here. So if you can't access the OneDrive, my labs are a little cleaner, maybe more accurate on as far as screenshots and that sort of thing. But if you can't access the OneDrive, hopefully you can access that page. And it's good. There's a lot of, let's bring that up too. There's a lot of great learning here, and this is something you can kind of take away. So you'll see it. That's what this link takes you to. It advertises an app of the day, instructor-led training, which I've also done many, many times. And you can see there's a bunch of kind of getting started kind of things, and then other learning paths that this is a part of. All right. So of those labs that I've shared, let me just again go back to them. I apologize for moving around a little bit. I'll try to make sure I always explain where I'm going. So this first one I'm going to do is, this is creating an app from a template. Now, is it going to go anywhere? Is it going to be anything cool for you? No. But what it does is it just kind of gets you started. And then once you've created this app, which will be a little bit dead-ended because there's not really any data per se. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one. I'm going to show you all of the pages that it's done, all of the components that it has, and give you a little bit of a tour of the things you could then start to build. And then we'll have a starter one for creating an app simply by talking to Copilot. And then I'll show you creating an app from Excel. And I'll start that one, and then I'll show you more of a done version of it. And then we'll take a break. And those of you that can work on the labs, maybe we'll take 10 to 15 minutes, and then we can move on to Copilot Studio. All right. So here I am in the make.powerapps.com. I think somebody posted a link. You had a slight variation to that, and that's great. Unfortunately, our Microsoft products don't always have 100% consistent nomenclature. So we have make.powerapps.com. We have make.powerautomate.com, but then like Teams is teams.microsoft.com or yeah, anyway, because it's like not everybody talks to each other apparently. All right, so I'm going to do new app, start with an app template. So this is that first lab, and I'll go fairly slow. So if you want to just follow along with me rather than looking at the lab, that's fine. And for those of you that don't currently have access, I'll go slowly so you can see it a little bit better. So I'm going to start with an app template. And now I'm a little disappointed. We used to have about 25 templates here, and a lot of them were actually quite useful. Like when I said you would create this from a template and you're probably not going to use it, it's just a great learning tool. There were a bunch that I thought were really useful. So I'm disappointed that we have trimmed this down quite a bit, but I will just pick one. I'll do this meeting capture. It gave it a name. It's whatever you want to make it. I'll just leave it at that. That's fine. This is just for demo. And I'll hit next. Now, sometimes I mentioned a while ago here today that we have like 1,500 plus connectors. These connectors are for everything that you might connect with. And sometimes, depending upon the template or depending on your app that you build, you might have to connect to other things. So here it's connecting to Office, connecting to OneNote, connecting to Planner, connecting to Outlook, Outlook itself, so that you can interact with emails. And so you can see it's it might just kind of pick things out. Okay, I'm just going to say sign in. And this is always just kind of a one-time thing as you're getting started. And yep, I'll just allow access. I'm in a very contained environment, so I'm not too worried about things here. Oh, okay. I didn't like about that. This one has a little bit more than a couple of the others, so I might back out and try one of the other ones. Yep, I have to allow access. Okay, I'll give this one more minute. Okay, I might. Okay, I'm gonna kill this one, and I'm gonna go back to one that I know will work. But you can see it's this one. It's got a lot of stuff going on in it, and it's going to use all of that. Now, in the real world, you'd start that out, and you would do it one at a time as you're doing things. And if you had an issue, you would take the time to troubleshoot. I'm going to just choose this book a room. Oh, you'll notice also that it also uses tablet or phone, meaning they would work on either, but sometimes you might optimize an app if you know that it's really just going to be mobile, or if it's going to be on a tablet or a laptop desktop, because then you might need that for more screen real estate. Whereas a phone, you can have a lot of stuff on it, but it just you don't want users to have to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll, or zoom in so they can see things. So it really kind of depends on your needs. But you can always switch it, and they will always work on either, regardless of how you make it. And then what it will do is, so like if you chose tablet, and if somebody accesses it via their mobile, it would work. It's just that they might have to do a little bit of scrolling, or it might make multiple pages. Okay, so that one I knew was going to work. And so here I am. It's created this app for me. And this also allows me to give you a little bit more of a tour here of the tool, and talk about kind of some core functionality that you can then begin getting into. Now, at any point, I can preview it. There's a play button up here in the corner. So without doing anything, I haven't done anything in this app yet other than start the template. I'll hit play. And okay, it's asking me book for an existing meeting or book without a meeting. I mean, I'll click one of those, and it takes me into another screen. And okay, there's no rooms available. That's okay. But you can see, it's got these calendar control, timer control. This is all pretty straightforward. If you're already using Outlook, I don't know if you really need this, but it is nifty to see what this can do. And then I can always go back, depending on what navigational elements are available. Here I can book now without a meeting. And I think why it's saying no more meetings for today is there's just no data in here, and that's fine. And then it's a little subtle, but over here on the right, I could look and see how this would look on a phone, for instance. So I could choose, it even offers, a whole bunch of other phones. I have a Galaxy. That's right. It doesn't matter. I'll just pick the Apple 14, and because obviously, the person would turn it. You could look at how it's going to look on any of these devices. All right, I'm going to click edit, and I'll show you some more stuff here. So again, over here, way on the left, is my tree view. This is all of the components that make up my app. And I could insert. I could also click insert from above. You can see that there's all sorts of things that we can insert. If you wanted to insert, a video clip or camera. That's a great example where you might want to add into your app the ability to read a QR code or a barcode, or to take a picture. And then probably, if you're going to allow them to take a picture, then you'll probably also allow them to upload that to some data source, maybe SharePoint or something, or Azure Blob Storage or something. Also, the ability maybe to use Tap, Tap, of course, but maybe also you maybe need a signature. So then you might have a signature box that can read a finger. And then what's also pretty typical on apps, and these are pretty standard, is an icon that represents some action. So you might, maybe the save button, or the plus means to add, or navigational elements, or a bell for an alert or a reminder. I mean, these are all really pretty standard. The advantage of that, especially if it's a mobile app, for instance, is that then you don't have to add in additional text. Maybe you can easily have a tooltip, but for the most part, if somebody sees, the save button or the delete button or the cancel, they know what that's for. And so you're just going to add that in. And so like I could add maybe cancel, add the cancel button. And I just put it wherever I need it on the form. And then somebody knows whatever they're doing at that point. They click that and it's basically escape out. Now, some other cool things all throughout as you are working with something. There are properties over on the far left, and then there's also additional controls at the top here. So like, for instance, if I click this button here, it's this book for an existing meeting. It assumed, first of all, it assumed that probably the most important thing I want to do with this button is on select. Meaning, when somebody clicks that button, what do I want it to do? But you can see there's lots of other things. There's, color controls and the visibility of it. Maybe you disable it if it's not available for someone to use, or you want to control the border, the color, and all of that. All of that kind of that UX components. But what's really cool here, so let me go back, make sure I've got on select. Oh yeah, one more I'll click on there was text. This shows you how simple this can be a lot of times. I click on text, and that's the text. This is what is the label of or what you're seeing in the button. And it's in double quotes, because sometimes otherwise that might indicate a function or something. But so that's how simple it would be to change. And so I could just say, I don't know, I could change this, I could say maybe, whoops, get inside the quote. I might just say, like, maybe instead I want to say setup booking, and so you can see as simple as I type there, it is changed the label. All right, but let's look again at the, excuse me. Oh, there we go. The on select. So, and this is really important. So if I hit this drop down here, can I make this bigger? Nope, that's the wrong thing to make bigger. Nope, I can't. Okay, up here at the top, we're giving it a series of commands, and this is the low code that you would need to do sometimes. And again, this is why it's great to create an app from a template, because it's going to have a lot of stuff that you're going to want to be doing. And so like here, it's saying set book for meeting, true. Set date, time, room change, true. So what that's telling is you're passing information into maybe the next screen. And you can see that's the last command here is navigate. And it's you're telling it where to go. And so the navigate meeting select screen. So now I could see that it's going to go to this screen because that was the navigation. And then maybe I might have on my new cancel button that I just popped in, I might say navigate so I might say on select, navigate. And I'm just kind of interacting with the keyboard here. You can see the IntelliSense that it was doing. And then I can just start typing the landing screen. There it is. I hit enter and enter again, or close parenthesis, excuse me. And so now if I were to play this, oops, we need to change back to, there we go. Now when I click that, it takes me back to the landing screen. So that's how simple it was to add in a navigational element, and you're able to play it and test it right here and all of that. So Okay, I think that's enough on the template. You can see there's lots more going on. But there's some of these other screens will have, other controls and such. And anytime you select a control or an object on the screen, it'll actually highlight it over on the side. There it is. So this is button. So what I always advise people to do is to have good naming of your components. Now it is a little tedious, but I think it's a best practice. And so like button 7.6, that's not super useful. So I might change that. I might actually rename that to, like, I like to prefix things like BTN and say booking date or something, whatever makes sense. And then if that was actually being used in any of my existing functions, it would automatically change that. And so I think that's just a good practice. And speaking of vibe coding, that's something that vibe coding isn't necessarily going to do well for you. Now, vibe coding, one of my favorite features of it is it can document your work. Now, if you're a developer and you're checking code in and out, you're supposed to document your work. And Copilot can be extremely helpful for that. Whatever your platform, whether you're using maybe GitHub or Visual Code or some other platform, if you've got GitHub with it, it can do that for you. And so that is probably my bigger complaint about vibe coding or creating apps with automation like this. It's not going to do that stuff that I would scold junior developers for. Okay. All right. Enough of that. I will go back. Sure, I'll save. I'm going to go back. Yes, I saved. Oh, yeah. Okay, now it's asking me to leave. That's fine. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to my apps here, and I'll do another example, and then I'll show you the creating the coffee app from Excel, and then we'll take a break, and those of you that can work on labs, you can work on labs, and we'll just take 10-15 minutes or something. All right, a couple more examples. So I'll click back on apps. Now you can see that one I just did is now here. Showed I created 39 seconds ago. Now I can play it from here. I can do other things. You can see all the other stuff about it. I could create an agent from the app, which is pretty cool. So then you could have it so that you share this app out with however people access apps, maybe through Microsoft 365. And yes, you could have it so that it actually shows in this list of apps, or maybe you'd embed it in a portal or something like that. And then if you create an agent with this app, it'll automatically be available within that app. And so then the agent can interact with the data, answer your questions, and it's got the knowledge of that app. So that's pretty cool. There's lots of other things that you might do here. You can share it. So this is something I would always advise IT teams to manage how this can be done. You can also add to Teams, and then when you go to Teams, you'll see it there. So lots and lots of things to do. All right, let's do one more, just kind of quick and simple thing here. I'll start with Copilot. So I might, what should I do? Create an app. Create okay. See, a lot of people will have like these. They'll have notes. They'll have a script for themselves when they do a live demo. I've just done this so long that I don't bother do that. But then sometimes I paint myself in a corner. Let's see. Create an app for tracking new laptop requests. Now, I could just leave it at that, and it's going to start to do stuff for me. I could add more information. I could say include costs, comparison, manufacturer information, and how about create a process for approval if machine is greater than $1,000. Okay, let's try it. And I haven't done this exact example. I'm just showing you what you could do here. And then once we're into it, we can continue to have Copilot kind of support us on that. And maybe it's going to ask. It might ask for legitimately. It might ask for information about what data do you want in here. Okay, so this is a pretty good start. You can see that it's got manufacturer, it's got laptop requests, and it's put in kind of typical things we might want to have in it. It's created a relationship, correctly so. Maybe you can see that of one to many from manufacturer to laptop request. And then approval process, same thing. And then it's asking me, here we've created tables for manufacturer, laptop requests, and approval requests. And, so it's a really pretty good start. Now, I won't bother creating anything else yet at this point. I'll just say save and open app. Let's see what it does. And last week I did one because of the audience on housekeeping. It created this. It even created some sample data of housekeepers, all of the tasks that they might do in turning over a room. And it was actually pretty fun. And again, this is just make shit up as I go. All right, we'll give that just a second. And we'll see what we've got. Getting there. Again, like I was just showing with that booking a room, on the far left side, we'll have a tree view. So this is going to be all of the components. And then in the middle, our palette in which we are working. And then on the right side will be the property is about whatever object we select. So like, for instance, if I click a text box on the left side, I'll see all of the stuff that's, kind of the things that you might need to do with that. All right, well, let's see what we've got. So like, for instance, if I click on the welcome screen, here we are. It's got manufacturers, laptop requests, approval requests. Now, it probably didn't add any data. Manufacturers. It did create tables in Dataverse. So this will be fun. I'm going to open another tab. And I'm going to go to make.powerapps.com. And if I scroll down, make sure I'm in the right environment. Yep, this one here. Oh, there's my. And yep, I'm in the right environment. And I go to tables. It's now going to have, I should have showed you this before so that you knew this was all automatically happening. I've got laptop request. This is a new table that was created, manufacturer, and there was an approval process. So it created those tables for me. So like, for instance, I could drill into manufacturer, and I could even add some ad hoc data here for fun. Come on. I don't think it added any by itself, but I'll take a look. But you can see all of the, oh, it did. Okay, that's pretty cool. It added all those for me. I should not have doubted it. All right, let's go back and let's hit play on this. So up here at the top, the little play button. and I could click on manufacturers, and it takes me to that table, and it's got not a lot of data. You can see that it's tracked the country and the name. Okay, that's not a bad start. Obviously, if you need more columns, you just go into Dataverse, create more columns, and then you just have them simply displayed here. And then I could edit. So like, I don't know, HP, maybe I edit it and I say, instead of HP, this doesn't make sense necessarily, but if any of you are old enough to remember, that's the real name, the original name. So now I'm actually changing. This is already functioning as an app. So if I go back to Dataverse and I refresh this, just hit refresh, it should show HP spelled the way I just updated it. There we go. And so it's just I'm just demonstrating that we are immediately working in data, even though we haven't really completely produced. There it is. So now you can see it's Hewlett Packard. And then if I go back, I hit the home button. And laptop requests, it's here. It's defining some information. It's got a weird date, but that's okay. Yeah, anyway, so you get the idea. Okay, pretty cool. And that was just within a few minutes. Now, is that perfect? No, but it can be a great jump start for something you want to do. Back in the day when I was doing a lot of projects, I would go to a customer, we'd be meeting in the morning, talking about, what they want in an application, and they'd go to lunch, and I'd do something like this and come back and show them. And this is obviously a lot faster than I would have done over lunch, but you can see how you could then, maybe your manager, your commanding officer wants to see you do something, and you could quick create a proof of concept this way. Okay, that's maybe another great way of describing what you could be doing with Copilot is create proof of concept, and then maybe you go through a little bit more managed, prescribed way of doing it. So, all right, okay, I'm going to do one more example, and then we'll take a break and/or give you some time to. Oh, I should call this my laptop app. Okay, so I'm going to start one more, and then I'll show you more of a done example of it, of how you could, if you go through all of the App in the Day labs, this is what you could actually build out. So, yep, I saved. Let's go back. All right, so I'll go back to apps. I'm going to do new app once again. I'm going to say start with data. I could also click this button here, does the same thing. And I'm going to upload a file. Now you can see there's a bunch of other kind of typical ones. Maybe you're going to build an app from Dataverse data, or you've got, data in OneDrive or SharePoint or something, or maybe you connect to a SQL server, or to Azure. There's all sorts of options. I'll just choose this simple one. Let me show you the file first quick. It's this coffee data, and it has machine name, price, all this information. And then there's actually, this is a public link. So if I copy one of these image links, paste it here, this will work, and it'll show a coffee maker for you. So it's kind of a fun way of working with it. So I'm going to select from device, and here's that file, and it's going to give me a preview of it, which is great. And it should recognize it. Now, it would need to be a table within Excel, not simply a list of records. However, you could still probably work with it. Like if you had a CSV, it would probably show the first row as machine name, machine type, primary color. That would be the first row of data, and then you would might have to toggle that switch, but it did it automatically. All right, I'm just gonna tell it create app. Let's see what it does. and then we'll just kind of get started with it, and then I'll show you one where it's been more complete, just to save time. Pull it out of the oven, so to speak. Okay, so this is, I mean, it's cool because this is really fast. This is rapid development, certainly, and it allows us to kind of jumpstart our development and then kind of go from there. A lot of times people, they'll stare at the blank screen. They'll say create from blank, and it's like, okay, what do I do? Well, you got to have data. You've got to have, not necessarily, but generally, yeah, and you have to have, screens, forms, fields, and so forth. And so there we go. It kind of started on this. I could play this. Now I see one thing it didn't do very well is it's just showing the text here. I think maybe what I'll do is I will just, let me click on form. Close Copilot. Click on form, show my properties pane over here. I can click edit fields, image. Okay, it's not reading that correctly. So let's remove. And then instead, and I do find that sometimes that it doesn't do these sort of things correctly. And I'll input an image, choose media image. It put it way up there in the corner. I would have to, do a bit of rework here to get this pretty. I'll just plunk it right there. And then I will change that up here where it says image, sample image. I'm going to say, and this is part of the low code that you would gradually learn. I'll type in this item. Oh, what's the name? Okay, it's not liking that. Okay, how would do this item, and it should be the image URL. Go back here. What's it called? Image, yeah. Okay, so sometimes this doesn't always work in front of everybody. Huh. Okay, I'm not going to worry about it right now. Oh, parent. That's what I needed to be. Parent. Let's try that. I'll try this one more time. Otherwise, I'll show you the done one. Parent dot image. Yeah, I'm not quite doing that right. Okay. Anyway, that's fine. Let me show you a done one. And in the real world, obviously, I would figure out what I'm doing wrong. I'm going to toggle over to, but otherwise you can see it's done a pretty good job here. So I'll just delete this for now. If I hit play on this, I've got each of my machines. I would clean up what it did the price twice there. I would change that to probably like, description and price. And then whichever one I choose, you can see it's already hooked this form to my list, and it's already added in an edit button. And now I could come in here and I could maybe I'm going to change the price. Maybe I'll make it $9.80, something like that. And then I could save that, and now it's taken that. So there's obviously a little cleanup, but that was a great start. And especially when you're new at it, just learning these tricks, like going from screen to screen, like if I go to the another one of the screens or another one of the containers, and I want to know what is this button doing? It's update context, edit mode, and then it's looking at the selected record. I know that's, if you haven't done any of this, you're probably a little on that. That's okay. It just kind of gives you a start as to the things that you might do. So let me grab the environment where I've got this more done. And I know the images are showing properly. So get back over to, okay, this is an entirely different tenant. And I've got this machine ordering app. So I'm going to play that. This is coffee machines. And it's done comparison for me. It's got different groups of coffee makers. So like, for instance, maybe I want an at-home espresso machine, or well, here, for your own mess, let's get commercial. Here we go. So let's think big, guys, right? So let's say, okay, this one's pretty cool. And yeah, this one's similar. I like the red though, but we'll check this one out. And then I can hit compare, and it's giving me a nice description. So this is all built from that spreadsheet of simple data. And then I say I need to order this, and it wants a justification. I said our current one is underperforming. Go, and I submit a request, and then that gets sent to my manager. And there's actually a process that's built in as well. So you hear, I'm my own improver, but that's okay. I click OK, and so all of that is that also that basic navigation that we talked about, and oh, I'll show you also up here in the corner where it's showing my name. It also knows all of that natively, and we don't have to build in all that stuff. And so pretty cool. And so if you do the whole app in a day exercise, this is what you would get to the point of building out. All right, let's take a break. And when we come back, I'll carry on with Copilot Studio. And it'll be kind of similar. I've got some slides and I'll demo, and then we'll see what we can do, and then I'll be passing it off to you, John, after that. So we've got probably about another hour with Copilot Studio stuff. So I will put a timer up so that if you step away, come back, and I'll start talking again. So let's say 14 minutes, and that takes us to yeah, 5 minutes to the hour. All right, so hit save. Oops. See, I've got a few different timers here. There we go. Okay, so I'll put this up, and I'll keep sharing. And I'm going to pause and go off camera I'm going to mute and go off camera for a moment, refresh my beverage, and we'll carry on. All right, welcome back, everyone. I think you see my timer ticking down there. And just a reminder that if you want to try out that complete coffee app, that was in that link that I shared in the chat a little bit ago. And it takes you to this page, and there's a link for that information. Otherwise, this is the one I just kind of jump started, and it will walk you through the whole components of that. All right, so let's take a look at next. Let's look at Copilot Studio. So remember, I was talking about, did a little bit around Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, and we got into apps, particularly Canvas apps. Now let's take a look at agents. So we've covered Copilot and the apps. This is Copilot Studio. This, to a certain extent, is kind of that merge between our apps and our agents and our workflows. So we've built the apps that need the work to be done, and then maybe we have processes, workflows behind it, like an approval process, or just checking for information. And then that agent can surface that to us. That agent can interact with us and provide maybe additional context so that we can make a decision. And so then you're going to build these agents around your business needs, how your work actually gets done. And then with Copilot Studio, you can bring that work together, connecting the data and the tools. And then there's oftentimes there are great candidates for automation, those multi-step tasks that are repetitive, that can be executed reliably in the background. And you still have that enterprise control, that governance and security that's required. So just thinking of it again, is this is where the execution happens, taking that repetitive work off your people so they can focus on judgment and exceptions. That's always been, and it's interesting. It's always been this way. I mean, as long as I've been working in software, 25 plus years, we've always thought about, what can we automate? And of course, now our automation capability is just so vastly improved from back in the day. And so here's just a beginning look at the kind of the interface here. Let me start this over again so I can talk through this a little bit better. So here we have an example of Aon. They have the MCP server to their own customer insights. So again, that's a tool. That's a way of connecting to data and interacting with that data for us. And first time, it's prompting for a connection. And then there's some additional details we can provide, things like how we're gonna use credentials, what tools will we use or not use. You can see those can be controlled. So this particular MCP server has several tools, and you can decide which one. And then we'll look at what resources or knowledge that this needs. And then it's then going to look at we're going to add another tool. This is our flow for getting a portfolio information. I know this isn't necessarily applicable to you, but I think you can get a flavor for all these different pieces that it's going to do for us. And then we could test it right here. So it's saying, please provide a view of the investment portfolio for this customer, this account number. And while you're testing it, you see all the stuff that's going on. This animation is zooming around a little bit, and it came back with a pretty nice looking bit output. So earlier versions of Copilot Studio, we would have to have formatted all of that, create maybe an adaptive card to do all of this. Now here's an example where we're interacting with another agent. So we also have that capability of agent to agent. And I'm gonna go back 1 second, and that was a great example there. Just gonna pause. Oh, I didn't go back far enough. I'm just gonna pause. Yes, now I've made it hard to see, but you see in the description there, these are instructions that we are giving it. And this is a big step forward from when we relied heavily on topics. We can still use topics. And in fact, I've got just kind of an intro document that I've shared with you for that. And as you're building it, as you're interacting with it, it can be very iterative. You can go back into your description and give it better, clarification or more information so that it can continue to improve. I'll unpause here. And but then that output. So then you could see, like, you might have in the instructions, you might say, list this as a table, bulleted, however you want. So you could describe how you want that output to be. So now we're adding another agent to communicate with. So we have this investment agent, communications agent. And what that does is that gives this agent, the NFP wealth management agent, additional knowledge and capability. Because now it could talk to other agents, and you hear a lot of instructions what to do. There's some resources, some knowledge, additional agents it's working with, and then of course topics. We've always had topics, and sometimes we'll use topics to be for very kind of explicit scenarios. So pretty good example of all the different things you might do with. And so now to review and evaluate the portfolio and provide some appropriate guidance and give me output using the communications agent. So it's interacting with multiple agents, get the portfolio snapshot, it's retrieving internal policies. You can follow the flow of it there vertically, which is very logical. So now it's getting the analyst insights. Now, you wouldn't necessarily expose this visibility of all of this to the user of this agent, but you as the author, as the maker, you can be testing. You can see, you can confirm or troubleshoot based on all the steps that it's taking, and then it's even pulling up that other agent, that communications agent, had the information to call an email template, so that then output all of this information in a nice formatted view for that communication. And then you can see it's connecting to Outlook email, and it's complete. So pretty cool stuff. So then we also have the capability when we really begin to kind of put them into the business process. You don't want it to be a guessing game. So we have this capability called evaluations, that can measure like the accuracy, the completion rate, user satisfaction, instead of just relying on kind of anecdotal information. And so it's essentially it's code testing, really. But you can give it you could upload a list of scenarios, list of questions, list of prompts that you want it to run through. And so then this will make your agent not only more powerful, but maybe even production ready. You can see how well is it performing consistently? Is it aligned to your policies? Is it being improved? So this really gives us a way of doing a good run testing on our agents. Oh, that's another thing I didn't point out before, is that's the satisfaction, because you encourage your users to give it a thumbs up, thumbs down if the information was accurate or not accurate, because we want it to be accurate. We can't assume that everything it's giving us is completely correct. All right. We also give you the capability of choosing different models. I think this screenshot is a few months old. We are actually now, I think we default to Claude 5. I forget which, but you can see that drop down, there was lots of different flavors. You can also make sure it uses maybe Researcher, or maybe uses other agents that have been built into, like, here's this onboarding agent. Maybe for certain agents, the default model might be better than another one. So, or another one might be better than the default environment. So you might come in and, because sometimes it's based on response, it's speed, accuracy for different types of information. I do find that different models do things well versus maybe another thing they don't do as well, whereas another model does do better. So it's a little bit of a testing learning on how you might evolve those selections as well. And then as models evolve, then you might subsequently choose a new model. Some organizations might choose to block models, like for instance, we block Grok, but a lot of organizations might allow. So also pretty cool. And then here's a look back into Microsoft 365 Copilot, because then we can publish and gate that through Agent 365. We can have our agents publish for visibility in other apps such as Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's a logical one, or maybe in Teams. And I think I have an animation here. Yeah, there it is. And then here's how your users are going. Now you can also have them pinned. So the user could go to, there's a link there on the left that says all agents. A user could go there, click all agents and search for one. Or you can, as an administrator, pin them for the users, and you might decide that, that there's certainly certain ones are better. Now, in this case, in this example, Copilot's doing
Hey, Chad, we lost you for a second there.
For a second. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Am I back? I think these animations maybe are a little too much. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm just going to pause this. So basically my point on this slide is that for our users, our consumers now, we can publish these agents to meet them where they work. So if they're in Teams, if they're in Microsoft 365 Copilot, in SharePoint, maybe a custom portal, we can have those available to them and continue to support them as they need there. And through Agent 365, we can monitor and we can see the adoption, the usage of our agents. Maybe I'll have time to show you Agent 365 briefly to give you a little bit more idea that maybe if you're a developer, you're probably not going to be given access to Agent 365. Trust me, I don't in the real world, but there's a lot of great information there. And sometimes, if you're a developer, I'll say we as a developer, I'll just make an assumption that some of you are. We often need to help our admins with what needs to be done to explain why we're asking for something. Okay, so last slide here, just to give you a little bit more of a tour, and I'll do this first when I get into the demo, but you're going to select the environment that you're in. Now you can either start building the agent from scratch, or you can describe to it. I'm actually going to start by building one from scratch and give you a little bit more of a tour. Well, first I'll show you templates like I did on apps. I'll show you templates. I'll show you building one from scratch, and then I'll show you building with a Copilot. And again, I've got several labs for you. And and then there's also, let me bring that up one more time. Then I'll also be sharing, there's another whole page of resources that I've got for you as well. So I'm going to paste in this link. So again, it's my OneDrive link. Let me do that again as well. Just in case you missed that. If you're able to access this, you will see a series of labs here as well. And it's going to be the ones now that are CS lab, whatever. And then if you're not able to OneDrive or you want additional, you can access here. Is it all of the content? Oh, God no. We've got so much learning content, but it's a good start. Okay, let me go to my working screen here. So 1 second, and I'll share here. Okay, so we had a pretty significant change literally about 2 weeks ago. And what I'm encouraging you to do for now is not use the new experience, partly because the learning content has not caught up. I've started some labs, but usually I rely on like the product group, the engineering group, but the release of new content, the release of new content hasn't kept up with the release of the new UI to Copilot Studio. And a lot of our customers can't access it anyway. And I don't necessarily like doing trainings or workshops on preview, even though this one is general availability, but I still kind of I don't like to jump necessarily into something that's where the ink is barely dry on the code. So I'm going to have you work in what's been our new UI up until 2 weeks ago. And so I'll explain how the navigation for that would work. So like if I clicked on this Power Platform button in the lower left corner here, and I click Copilot Studio, that will bring me into the Copilot Studio kind of maker portal. So like we have make.powerapps.com, we have make.powerautomate.com, and now we have copilotstudio.microsoft.com. Again, a different naming convention, drives me crazy, but okay. This will be the new UI. Now, there's two options. If you want to do it and ignore my labs, that's absolutely fine, and just jump right in. But it is brand new, so, and you can see it takes a moment longer to load. It's going to be just a little bit different UI, but there's a toggle button that's going to show here in the upper right corner that you can turn off. Or a faster, better way is if I'm back over here, and I've got this in one of the labs. If I click on more, I'll see agents. And if I choose to pin agents and then click on that, I can create an agent from here that is the existing UI up until just a couple weeks ago. And when I say literally just, it was like August 5th, 8th, something like that. That the new UI started flowing out. And that's another reason why I'm having you not use the new UI, because some of you may not even have it. And you might say, what the heck are you talking about, Ted? So look, if I come, oh, it's still loading. All right, so here's the UI that's going to match the labs. And this is what I'm going to demo for a while first. So, oh, you don't have agents in the Air Force? Even when you click more, huh? Shoot. Okay. See what happens if you click the down in the, if you're over in Power Apps, and you click Power Platform like I did earlier. Do you have Copilot Studio there? Maybe somebody let me know on that in a minute, and then that would bring you to the new UI that's still loading. Oh. Okay. All right. Let me get into, I'll demo like I did before. And, oh, I see you don't have it there either. Okay. All right. Okay, Q3. Okay. Well, maybe soon. Okay. All right. Well, I will do like I did before, a little bit more extensive demo. And all right, thanks, David. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll maybe take a 5-minute break as I turn it over to John. So give me a half hour. So we'll give John a half-hour warning here, probably. All right. So here, I'll give you a tour here first. I'm in Copilot Studio, and I'm on the home page. You know, it's just offering me, what do I want to build? Do I start with an agent? Some other types of things. There's always learning resources. And then if I click on agents, I'll see any of the agents that I have access to within the organization. Um, and and you can see there might be a bunch already available. There might be maybe the ones you've created or ones that have been created and shared with you. Now, before I go too much further, if I go back to, oh, I don't have that tab open. If I go back to Microsoft 365 Copilot, this is where if I were just a user consumer, not a maker or author, if I come here, I might see agents here. I actually don't see any there. Let me show you my other one. If I go to, yeah, so over here, this is maybe just a slightly more elevated environment. I see agents that are available here, and I might look for more agents, and this would be any that I have that are available to me to work with. So like researcher, I like using that one. Maybe I want to work with Excel or Word or something. So any of these I could choose and pin, and then it'd be available, just quick link right there. Or the Agent 365 administrator could pin them for people so they don't even have to go look, because some people might not even realize that there's an agent that's great for them to use. And so this is one place where people can get agents. So like agents that are like, here's some other example ones that are featured or available. Okay, let me go back to what I was demoing. Has the other one loaded yet? All right. So I'm just going to do a new agent. I'm going to create from, where's my template option? New agent. Where's my link for templates? Grr. I am not seeing the creating from a template. Let me try this one. Well, okay, I'll see all agents. Okay. Okay, so that was more clicks I wanted to take. So here's some templates. So like if you create one for citizen services. I haven't tried this before, but it'll give you an idea of maybe something that's here. So the description. So first of all, it's got a name, it's got an icon. Icons just like mobile apps are great for easy recognition, or maybe for branding. So that's always a great thing. You'll set a default language. Mine defaulted to English, but you can see there's lots of other languages that may or may not be enabled within an organization. And I give it a description. Now the description can be part of the knowledge of the agent. So it can not only help your agent, but can also help your audience as to what the end goal is. But I rely more on instructions for what I want the agent to do. But regardless, there's still a bit here. This is about the city of Redmond's public website is knowledge source and blah, blah, blah. And then here's some instructions. You are a citizen services assistant that helps citizens navigate government services and information. Here's another thing that you can tell your agent: maintain a polite tone. So there's other ways you might say that. Make it be polite and respectful. Make it be playful. I don't know. That's probably not appropriate, certainly for military. But excuse me. But maybe respect the chain of command. I don't know what you might put in there, and that helps give the agent not a personality, but at least a little bit of of something that they're looking for. Now, suggested prompts. Now, you don't have to put these in, but this is great. Again, I talked about this quite a while ago here today, where you might put prompts in so that someone looking at this agent has at least a starting guidance, because they may not otherwise have any idea what to say. They may not know what to ask. It's always kind of that thing where does anybody have any questions? Well, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. And so this can be a great way of helping people kind of get started. So I might say, like, I might add a suggestion like maybe rubbish. When is my local garbage pickup? I don't know. How about permits? How do I submit a new building permit? Like if I want to build a deck or something. So you could add in a bunch, and that just kind of helps the consumer. Maybe, I did this without really any idea what's in this. It's just the template I chose. And so now, okay, this is a pretty good start. I'll hit create. So it's creating the agent. It's got those websites as resources, but you might add other resources. Maybe there's like policy information or, rules or, maybe links to, the DOT, the Department of Transportation, or just so, maybe somebody's asking about, when my street is under construction, when is it going to be done? And I take that from personal experience. The street right at the edge of my neighborhood has been under construction for 3 months. And so if I wanted to add more knowledge, I could do that. I could say add knowledge, and I might have files that I want to use, maybe, documents, PDF files, whatever, that help with what's being done for this in this neighborhood or in this municipality. And it could be public websites. If it's things like SharePoint, that's likely more internal, but yes, you can also have SharePoint external facing. And then Dataverse, if you're looking up data, ServiceNow, maybe that's being used for the customers for the support tickets or something like that, and so forth. So that's how we could add more information in. And then you could also enable Work IQ. So this would be, we allow access to the intelligence layer kind of within the Microsoft Graph. So the emails, the Teams meetings, the Word documents, all of that people have been working with. And then if maybe there was another agent you're going to interact with. So add an agent. I don't think I have any others. Yeah, mine are just ones I've been creating. And so, but either way, you could add them, and it will include that in the knowledge, so to speak. Give a description. I'll just say demo. That one isn't doing anything, but just shows you how you might connect up one agent to another. It used to be we didn't have the capability. You would have to have a topic which I'm going to go to next, that would be very prescribed steps or something, or information. And then if somebody reached a point where this agent couldn't do anything else, it would pass off to that other agent. Now we have a bunch of out of the box ones, plus this one as a template had some created. So like, for instance, first I'll just show you the greeting one. And so this is how it's going to get started. This tool handles queries like these. Good afternoon, good morning. However somebody prompted, however they started it, how can I help you today? And then it's going to go on to something else. But in some cases, you might have something very specific that you want to include in that. Because this one was built in the template, let's take a look at it, the road closures. And so what this is doing is allowing to check, here's the road closure site. Oh, ArcGIS. If any of you are familiar with that, it's an organization. They're actually kind of the leading organization, particularly with government, for providing geographical data. So that's pretty cool. I'm not surprised that they included that. All right, let's give this one a try. And so I'll just type in, let's say, are there any road closures near my office at 1 Microsoft Way. And let's get it look up. This is, okay, I got to allow. This is the first time using it. We'll see. I don't know if this is going to work. I just tried correct. Okay. Yeah, I'd have to do some more work to get this all working. Okay, never mind. My option didn't work there. That's the fun of just kind of guessing at what things can do here. All right, let's go back. I'm going to click on settings here and show you a couple things. So this is now this is like a lot of applications, settings are the things you might do to kind of further configure something or further, kind of the metadata, I guess you might say, about your agent. So here's where I can decide to use generative AI or not. Some organizations might say, no, we don't. What that means, if I chose classic though, then that means that my topics and responses have to drive everything. And maybe that's fine. It's just going to be more work for you as the maker, whereas the generative AI will be able to kind of look a little deeper and be a little bit more researcher capability. You can allow whether to have agents or not. You could choose whether to use older models. I forgot to show you a model. I'll go back to that. Just some more things you could kind of set about it here and get user feedback. A lot of times people will say, well, yeah, you can see it's off by default. Use information from the web, meaning you're not going to let your agent just do a general search. Now, in some cases, that's fine. But in this case, it's going to be very specific. And then you can decide whether you're going to use, PDFs, text files, all of that. So you have all that kind of control. I'll just show a couple of them here. Security. So this is one where you might set the authentication. Now, typically, if you're building within the Microsoft realm, you'll probably leave it as authenticate with Microsoft. Sometimes you might have no authentication, meaning that it's just public. That might be one that goes on maybe the public side of say a government website. And then authenticate manually, that would be specific to the channel in which you're deploying it. So let's say I deploy to a public-facing portal that maybe some of it is no authentication, but some of it does require authentication. So like if I'm logging in to look at my tax records, I want to make sure I can log in. I don't want my tax records to be no authentication. And so in that case, you're going to build you could have some other mechanism based on that channel as to what it needs to be done. Typically what I do in the work I'm just doing the authenticate with Microsoft, because when I go to publish, I'll probably just publish to like Teams or something like that. But in the real world, you're going to have more nuance there. So lots of other things here. Entities, these are kind of interesting. This is where you give it the intelligence. You can almost kind of think of it as like master data, where you want to know, maybe you'd have like bases and you would have a listing of all of the military bases. And so then, or maybe, I don't know, government departments or something like that. So then it knows like if it's going to offer, somebody says, oh, I'm inquiring about an office in Texas. And then it's smart enough to come back with any government offices in the state of Texas. I guess it's kind of a simple way of saying that. So that's how we could utilize these. So like for instance, continent, that's going to be pretty obvious. It's Asia, Antarctica, Australia, so forth. So okay, I think there's lots here, but I think kind of gives you an idea of the stuff you'll do in your agent. Let me go back to here. So that was my citizen services. Now I might just create a new one from blank. And so maybe I'll just call this demo gov, kind of our session here. And so there's not much here at the beginning. And because I said from scratch. Now I could have described it, and I'll do that as my next example. But in this case, I can choose the model as my and the organization may define ones they allow or not allow. And that might go through a vetting process. Sometimes that's vetting that's kind of a combo of the creators of those, like OpenAI or Anthropic, along with those that do the testing for, say, a government or some maybe a regulatory body, maybe like Europe with the GD. I'm forgetting the acronym. And so here I could choose which one is I'm going to start with here. And then I could begin giving instructions. I could have done that back a step, but I chose to start from scratch. I might say, describe what I want this to do, provide its tone. So I'm going to say, this agent will support queries for public government jeepers, I can't spell, but that's okay. It handles misspelling pretty well. Government information, such as policies, jeepers, policies. This is where if we're all in a room together, people would shout out things I could type. Let's say policies, regulations, and maybe new laws. I don't know. Totally making this up as I go. I'll say friendly, but concise. Okay. All right. And we can add some knowledge. We might say, I'll just keep this simple. I'll say a public website, and I'll just say data.gov. Okay, we'll try it. And I'll add to agent. And so what I could do is not turn on that public, but I could allow certain public ones. And here I could also add, okay, also support questions for approved software applications. And then I might add, shameless plug, I might add Microsoft.com. Okay. Now, a couple more things I'll show, and then won't necessarily add them per se, but I'll enable Work IQ, and then I'll click on Tools, and I'll show you just how. Whoops. Yes, I need to save. Okay. No. Still thinking. Should be saving. No. It should just be auto saving. Okay, I'll try Tools here. Okay. So let's say I need to access data, maybe, because maybe I'm going to ultimately prompt for someone to log in. So maybe I have a Dataverse. I might have some other data location. And if I click on the MCP, Model Context Protocol, here I can see there's lots and lots of other ones. Maybe maybe the organization uses SAP, and I search for SAP, and there'll be, some. I'm surprised it's more than I thought I would have going to see more, but that's fine. And so I could just search for whatever's being used within my organization. Maybe use DocuSign, and then I would likely need a login. So if it's a third-party NCP server, it's not going to use just my Microsoft login. So if I chose that, I would probably have to select I would have to select the connector. Okay, I don't have a DocuSign login. I don't know why I bothered to try that, but you can see at this point I would do a connection. I would create a connection to DocuSign. I don't have the information. I don't have a login, so I can't do it. But gives you an idea of how you might add in more information. That's where it's going to prompt me for a non-existent login. There we go. So anyway. So the more you need this agent to know, you keep adding it in, and and now with generative AI, I don't have to build out the topics that asks really specific questions of the person, or provide certain options for them to pick from. It's just going to do it for me nicely. Okay, let's give this a try. So I'll say what Microsoft, let's see, or how about this? How much does Copilot cost? I love to live dangerously, because now what you're supposed to do is talk to Greg, and he will give you a better answer. Why am I having connection problems here today? Oh, because I chose Work IQ, and I really didn't. Okay. Oh, I needed to enable them. Okay, that's fine. You can see some of the things you have to do sometimes. And usually this, like what I'm doing right now, this is a one-time thing. And I'll go ahead and submit, and then you'll find out whether you have access to it or not. Okay, there we go. Okay, now I'll say retry. There we go. If I hadn't selected Work IQ, I wouldn't have gone through that, but I wanted to be able to have an option of like, oh, I'll put this into a into a PowerPoint for me so I can present. And you can see it's looking at lots of stuff here, and it's going to come back. There's a free Copilot that may or may not work, as you all have discovered. Different consumer, and this is pretty good because it's also outputting in kind of a readable way. And that was a pretty basic question. And then it's giving me the references if I really needed, so I can put that in, maybe into I could say create a PowerPoint with executive summary to provide to my leadership team. Okay, so it's going to start working on that. Sometimes it takes a minute, but that's okay. So you can see, I mean, this took me literally just a few minutes, and I've kind of gotten the start on an agent. Is it going to do everything I want it to do? Probably not yet, but it's a great way to kind of monitor and check on it, or monitor and test it right here, right now. And then lastly, what I'll show what I can do is, I think I can do it while it's thinking. So I'll hit publish. And it won't be available for anyone to look at it or work with it unless you hit publish. And then you have to determine what channel in which you want to deploy this. Oh, it's still thinking, hasn't finished saving there. And I'll try to save it. I'll try to do it. Okay, there we go. All right. So you can see out of the box, I can do quite a few other channels. I might choose Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Teams. And so I'll add the channel. And even just a couple of years ago, this was, I might have to build a fence. I love that. Even just a couple of years ago, this was a bit of work. I would have had to go into Azure, go into Teams, do a bunch of other steps to make this work. So now all I have to do is to preview this, see agent in Teams. Nope, I don't want to open Teams. I want to see it. Oops. I want to use the web app because I'm not logged in as myself. And then I could pin it. I could make it available for other users to see, so that they could find it quite readily. So not a crazy fancy agent, but you could see. I wanted to just you to see all the necessary steps in order to do an agent. And so here we are, and it's just kind of giving me high level information about it. It works in Teams. It's free to other users. And I'll go and hit add. And then I will see it right here in Teams. And so just like I did before, I could chat with it as I was doing. That's actually a pretty good segue. I've got a few minutes left here to show you the Admin 365. So as a reminder, I've got labs for you. You can practice these. These are the ones that were in my OneDrive to working with topics. Create your first agent. That one is a little bit more involved. And then there's one that's just a nice coverage of creating and configuring agents, kind of like what I did, where you just kind of work your way through the process. And then this lab 4 is create your agent using Copilot. So you're going to describe a lot more than I did. I did a little bit of a description on my last demo, but this is just a lot more pervasive and interactive. If you're able to take a chance at that one, it'll probably take about an hour to do. And I've got another 8 labs that support that as a follow-up. Okay, let's do one more thing here. I'm going to show you the, it's not really part of the agenda, but I think it's appropriate to show. And this would be for administrators. I'm not in the real world here. I have access to look at this. And this is where all of the work could be monitored. All of the agents and flows and apps can all be visualized. So there's a Copilot section, and it's just giving me an overview of how Copilot is being used within the organization, and kind of things around cost and what's new and some messages. And then if I go to agents, I can see, there's 573 agents in this tenant. This tenant is used by me and my team. So I'm showing it because I have access to show some of this. You can see kind of the trending of them. I can see all agents if I click on that. And there's a lot of different views around here already. It's showing the ones I just created, the citizen services and the demo gov one. And this will show, I can see, where they came from, meaning is it something other than Copilot Studio, so like if there was an AI Foundry or something there, what channels they've been deployed to. So like if I could check for which ones have been deployed to Teams, you can see there's a bunch there. And then there's also this way of viewing how they're interacting with each other. I'm going to collapse this over on the side. So you can see that there's 31 Microsoft ones. There's 245 third-party ones. There's been 286 made from Copilot Studio. If I click on those, I can drill in and see all the ones that have been made and if they're interacting with others. Or, I can drill all the way down and say, here's the sales close agent. Oh, that's not very exciting. Some of these are just sitting here. Yeah, okay. If I zoom in, maybe I can see. There we go. That's better. So I could click on any of them and see what's been going on. This one said 29 sessions. And then if they interacted with other agents, there would be lines that would show that. I should build that out in this demo. But anyway, some pretty cool stuff. And if IT requires it, you could have it so that an agent must go through a process to be approved and such. So like here, one of my colleagues, she's got one that's submitted, it's pending review. And then once that's been approved, it'll become available for other people to see. In this case, Copilot and Teams. Okay, how about if we take like a 5-minute break and then we'll pass it over to John. So maybe I'll put up the timer, and then when he's ready to share, he can take over. But yeah, maybe just stand up, stretch. Don't take too long. We don't want to lose you. So just take a few minutes, and then we'll get started with John's portion. Thank you all for your time. I'm going to hang on, so I'll mind the questions if there's any, but I'll be here for the next hour as well.
Thank you, Chad. Yeah, we'll get back to this in about a little less than 5 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Every single time that I've gone through that training and seen that, I every single time there is something new and available for everybody out there. So what I want to kind of take everybody through next here is our final two sections here. I really want to spend a little bit of time around, we got into the application. Thank you, Ted. Now I want to kind of go with some best practices around application management and how do we scale some of those pieces here. So I went ahead and hopefully everybody can see my screen here. And let's jump into everything. Okay. One of the most important topics organizations need to address as Power Platform and Copilot Studio adoption accelerates is how we govern this technology without slowing down innovation. That question has become even more important with AI. We aren't just talking about people creating an occasional Power App or the Power Automate flow anymore. We're talking about enterprise applications, automated business processes, and AI agents that can access organizational knowledge, connect it to enterprise systems, and take actions on behalf of users. So our governance model has to evolve with the technology. Throughout this discussion, we're going to focus, on our areas, around organizing, protecting our data, deploying, and operating. We'll look at how environments should be structured and how we protect identities and data, on how we establish a controlled path into production, and ultimately how we monitor and manage the platform at enterprise scale. The key message I want everyone to keep in mind in this is governance should enable scale, not prevent it. So let's start with what good governance should actually, accomplish. One of the biggest misconceptions about governance is that governance, means putting restrictions around everything. That's not the objective. The objective is what I would call controlled self-service. We want people throughout the organization innovating with Power Platform and the Copilot Studio apps that Tad just showed us, but within clearly defined guardrails. There are four disciplines, that kind of like sits behind that. First, we enable. We give our makers approved environments, reusable, components, training, and a clear path for building solutions. Secondly, we control, establish consistent policies around our environments, data sharing, and these deployments. Third, we observe. You can't govern what you can't see. We need visibility into applications, flows, agents, ownership, usage, operational health, and risk. And finally, we improve. That governance isn't something we design once and walk away from. As adoption increases, we continually refine processes and policies that retire unsafe assets. We measure business value and increase organizational maturity. When we get that balance right, something interesting happens. The governance actually makes our organizations faster. Environment provisioning becomes faster. Deployments become repeatable. Ownership becomes clearer. And through the Copilot publishing, it becomes a lot safer. So instead of designing governance around every possible exception, design the fast path first and govern the exceptions. One of the most important architectural decisions in Power Platform governance is how we separate personal productivity from enterprise delivery. A common mistake organizations make is allowing the default environment to become the place where everything gets built. That's difficult to govern at scale, honestly. Instead, we're recommending a clear separation. On the personal productivity side, the default, environment should be restricted primarily to the, Microsoft 365 productivity scenarios with, tighter sharing and connector controls. When someone needs to do more advanced, development, environment routing can move that into a more isolated developer environment. Now we can look at the from the enterprise side. Once we're building a business critical application or an enterprise Copilot agent, we move into a structured lifecycle: development, test or UAT, pre-production, and then onto production. Development is where the teams build. Test is where we validate. Inside the pre-production, that allows us to rehearse releases and perform security and performance testing. And production is tightly managed, obviously. One principle I would particularly, emphasize for Copilot is this: Production agents should not live in the default, environment. If an agent is interacting with employees, customers, enterprise data, or business systems, we should treat that agent like an enterprise application. And once we've established that environment structure, the next question is, how do we manage those environments, throughout their lifetime? Environments shouldn't simply be created and then forgotten. We recommend treating environments as managed enterprise assets with a defined lifecycle. That lifecycle starts with request and classification. Who owns this environment? What's its purpose? How critical is it? What type of data does it contain? And where does that data need to reside? Then we provision and configure it with the correct environment type, security group, and governance rules. Once that's operational, we continually look at usage, capacity, policies, health, and ownership, very similar to what Tad just showed you on looking at those different agents. And finally, this is the step organizations frequently miss. We need a retirement process. Before retiring an environment, we understand dependencies, determining backup and export requirements, and decide whether we're decommissioning it or preserving it, something, based upon, DOP or recovery purposes. Every environment should have a minimum record associated with it, a business owner, technical owner, purpose, criticality, region, data classifications, lifestyle stage dependencies, and recovery requirements. If we can't answer those questions about an environment, that's usually an indication that we have some type of governance gap. Now, when we get into the mechanisms that help us implement governance at scale, those manage environments and environment groups. Instead of administering dozens or hundreds of environments individually, we group environments according to their purpose and risk profile and apply common governance rules that we talked about. For example, we might establish a personal productivity group, a development and test group, and finally a production group, and potentially maybe a dedicated Copilot or AI pilot group. Then those rules become a lot more progressively stronger as the risk increases. Development needs flexibility for people, to innovate those. We don't want to put people so tight in rules that they can't innovate. And as you saw a couple times through Tad's, experiences, sometimes access to security, those are the things that, we want to either tighten down or, loosen up. Those are some of the great rules that we ran into just even during our labs. Production is going to be different. Production requires stricter sharing, validation, backup, publishing, and deployment requirements. Environment, groups allow us to establish things like sharing limits, generative AI, settings, solution checker requirements, backup retention, things like usage rights, and default deployment pipelines. There's one architectural consideration that's important here. An environment, can't belong to only one group. Groups can't be nested, and exceptions to that individual environment, level are definitely limited. That means we need to spend, some time upfront designing the group strategy. Think of environment groups as the governance control plane for the whole entire Power Platform estate. And when organizations really kind of talk about that Power Platform estate and or security, the conversation often immediately goes to DLP. DLP is extremely important, but DLP by itself isn't an enterprise security strategy. We need multiple layers. The first layer is identity and access, Entra authentication, security groups, least privilege roles, and dedicated service identities where they're appropriate. The second layer is data and connectors. Which connectors are considered business connectors, which are non-business. Which one should be blocked entirely. Again, just kind of pulling up what Tad ran into a couple different times is he was blocked, IQ was blocking him, but then there were certain things that were definitely open to him. Again, going back to those rules, we can definitely block certain connectors, okay? And those are the connectors into other systems, other applications as needed. And, so increasingly, we need to pay attention not only to connectors themselves, but also to the connectors' actions, HTTP endpoints, MCP, virtual connectors, and other ways applications and agents can interact with external systems. And The third layer is auditing and runtime oversight. That's where the platform's inventory, purview audits, Sentinel alerts, runtime production, and ownership becomes extremely important. With AI agents, this becomes particularly significant because agents don't just retrieve information; they may potentially take actions. So organizations need to understand not only what an agent knows, but what it's allowed to do. The objective is layered protection, identity, data actions, and monitoring working together. For all your AI governance, don't ask only what data can this agent see. Ask what actions this agent can perform with that data. This is where governance becomes particularly important as organizations begin moving Copilot agents from experimentation into production. We recommend putting governance gates across the entire agent lifecycle. It starts when the agent is created. Is it being created, in an approved environment? Does it have a named owner? Is there a documented business process? Then we can look at, what the agent can actually connect to. What knowledge sources does it use? What tools and actions can it invoke? What credentials are actually involved? So before publishing, we need need a validation stage, covering accuracy, safety, DLP, compliance, and security testing. Then comes publishing. Where can this agent appear? Who can interact with it? What security groups should have access? Do we have any kind of release evidence on the data on which those users are using it? And governance doesn't stop once we click on publish. We monitor those sessions, and quality, runtime risks. We can audit the information and periodically recertify, any type of ownership. There are several things I would consider, production as kind of like non-negotiables. I would call them like using a non-default production environment, which require intra authentication unless exception has been explicitly been approved. Govern your knowledge, your tools, HTTP actions, any of your triggers and channels, such as Teams, voice, chat, or across any other social channels. Control sharing through those approved security groups. Don't just add those users as one-offs or ad hoc. Use the group. Protect the transcripting access, because everything that you do on those things, remember, those are actually being taken down, and those are that when you chat with those agents, that's a transcript, and that's being stored in the system. And inventory both your published and all your draft agents, because an unpublished agent connected to sensitive corporate information can still represent a governance risk. I mean, we're moving from, from a lot of you on this call, we're moving from a lot of chatbot governance to agent governance. And that's a fundamentally different conversation that we'll take on in the next sessions. Looking at our application lifestyle management, once something becomes an enterprise solution, there should be a defined path into production. For Power Platform and Copilot Studio, that means solutions and pipelines become the path to production. In development, makers or developers can iterate using unmanaged solutions and preferred solutions. When we move into test or UAT, we're using managed solutions, automated validation, and business acceptance. By the time we reach production, we're deploying managed solutions through approved identities with operational monitoring in place. Power Platform Pipelines gives us the mechanism for moving those solutions through environments with approval gates. There are 4 practices on this slide that I would strongly recommend organizations to standardize on. First, deployable apps, flows, and agents belonging to solutions. The second one is use connection references and environment variables rather than hard coding environment specific configuration. There again, if you are hard coding something back over into UAT, it's going to be different, most likely in production. Third, establish your solution checks and approval evidence. And fourth, define what happens when something goes wrong. Rollback backup and post-release validations. That's the difference between simply building low-code applications and operating Power Platform as the enterprise application platform. Technology alone doesn't create any of this governance. We also need accountability and an operating model. At the executive level, someone needs accountability for funding, risk appetite, and adoption outcomes. The platform owner administrator manage tenant settings, environments capacity, and platform controls. Security and compliance own areas such as data policies, auditing, privacy, and exception approval, etc. The Center of Excellence or enablement team focuses on standards, training, reusable patterns, and supporting the maker community. And ultimately, individual solution and agent owners remain accountable for value, quality support, and lifecycle management. For monitoring, Microsoft's current direction is increasingly centered on the Power Platform's admin center, such as the operational system of record. Tad kind of showed you just the beginnings of that, kind of like the tip of the iceberg. But there you can actually, as we saw, look at your inventory's visibility across your apps, flows, agents, owners, and metadata, like Tad was showing. We can use that information so we can understand adoption. We want operational health monitoring for business critical resources as well. And then we want to take that actionable risk insight and any kind of remediations as necessary. One point of this slide is the COA starter kit. This deck does reflect Microsoft's current direction that the starter kit is, again, we want to actively maintain. So your organization should prioritize native admin center capabilities and extend with APIs and connectors, where there's, any kind of specific requirements that you have with internal or external systems. All right, so implementation roadmap. So how do we actually get started? The good news is that your organizations, you don't need to, spend a year designing a governance framework before they can make any kind of progress. This slide, kind of provides a practical 90-day, roadmap. During the first 30 days, focus on the foundation, identify the platform owner and governance council, like we talked about, inventory your existing environments, applications, your flows, and your agents. Establish your target environment, topology, and naming standards, and begin restricting the default environment. During the days 31 and 60, now you can start implementing some of these control. You can start to enable managed environments and environment groups. Put environment routing, data policies, and shared controls all in one place. Define your Copilot Studio's publishing gates and establish your development to test to production pipeline. Then during days 61 through 90, we begin operationalizing all the governance. Establish regular inventory, usage, and health reviews. Find your orphaned assets and assign owners, or retire them. Because ultimately governance isn't successfully simple because we reduce the risk. It's successful when we've created an environment where the organization can innovate faster and more safely. And that's the leadership decision I would leave everyone with today. Approve the environment topology. Put an accountable platform owner in place and establish a 90-day governance foundation. Don't wait until the Power Platform and Copilot Studio adoption becomes too large to govern, but build that governance model that allows adoption, to scale. So let's move into some of the best practice around, use case definition and business values, and how we connect, AI investments directly to meaningful businesses and outcomes. Before we get, into AI specifically, I want to start with something that I think is becoming very increasingly important. How do we actually build a business case that leadership can approve? Because today, saying AI will improve productivity simply isn't enough. Leadership wants to know 4 things. What is this going to cost? What measurable value are we going to get? When will that value actually start showing up? And how confident are we in the assumptions? That starts with establishing the use case. We need a fact-based understanding of the problem today. Transaction volumes, delays, labor costs, what's going to be the impact to our customers, and importantly, the cost of doing nothing. Then we can prove the economics. Every number in the ROI model should be traceable. If we're claiming $1 million in value, I should be able to show exactly what volume, time savings, labor rate, or revenue assumption produced that number. And we can't ignore total cost of ownership, software implementation, integration, data, training, support, and any internal effort all need to be considered. Finally, we have to make the business case executable. Who owns the benefit? How will we measure it? What does adoption look like over the first 3, 6, or 12 months? That's the difference between an interesting AI idea and an investment executives are willing to approve. So let's take those principles and put some actual numbers behind them. This is a simple example of how quickly the economics can become meaningful in all your inside customer service. Let's assume an organization handles 5,000 complex cases every month, or 60,000 cases annually. Each case takes approximately 30 minutes, which represents about 30,000 hours of annual effort, or roughly 16.7 full-time employees or FTEs. But that's where it's just getting interesting. Of course, those 30 minutes, we're assuming approximately 20 minutes are spent on back-end lookup activities, finding information, moving between systems, researching customer history, reviewing orders, searching knowledge bases, and bringing all that context together. So that's roughly 67% of the handling time just inside that 30 minutes. If AI and automation can eliminate or significantly reduce that lookup effort, we're talking about approximately 20,000 hours of capacity annually, or 11.1 FTEs. At the assumptions in this model, that's approximately $756,000 of gross annual capacity value. And here's another way I like to look at it. Every 10 minutes, we remove from the process, the process represents roughly about 5.6 FTEs, or about $380,000 in capacity. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean we're eliminating 11 people. In most organizations, the bigger the opportunity is redeploying that capacity, handling more volume without adding headcount, reducing the backlog, improving response times, or allowing employees to focus on higher value interactions. Once we know that value, we can compare it against the investment and calculate the ROI and payback. That's the conversation executives want to have. Not simply what can AI do, but what measurable, operational outcome are we buying? The challenge, however, is getting organizations to focus on those outcomes, because right now we're surrounded by an enormous amount of AI noise. Right now, this slide probably, describes what a lot of us executives are feeling right now. A lot of the AI noise. Every week there's something new. AI agents, copilots, RAG models, multi-module AI, small language models, autonomous workflows, synthetic data, and every new announcement sounds transformational. The problem isn't that these technologies aren't important. Many of them absolutely are. The problem is determining where they can create scalable business value today. And if we look at AI through the traditional hype cycle framework shown here, organizations move, from innovation and excitement, toward the peak of inflated expectations. That's where overpromising starts to happen. Then reality, typically arrives. Pilots don't always scale. Organizations experience pilot fatigue. Executives start asking harder ROI questions, and enthusiasm begins turning into skepticism. But that isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's actually where organizations start learning what works. As we move toward the right side of this curve, the conversation changes from what can AI do to what can AI do reliably, securely, economically, and at scale. And notice the capabilities that become increasingly important as we move toward measurable business value: governance, security, cost management, and business alignment. So, my advice to executives is fairly simple. Cut through the hype. Prioritize a small number of high-value use cases and focus on solutions that can scale. AI experimentation is valuable, but experimentation without a path to measurable business value eventually becomes expensive noise. And that, typically raises an important question. Where should organizations, actually be focusing their AI investments today? And where is this, going over the next several years? Looking at this, we got a lot of different information here, obviously from McKinsey, but, in the basic two areas, what organizations can realistically drive value from today, and what could we, increasingly scale as we approach, 2030? It'll be here before we know it. On the left are practical AI value pools that organizations can pursue now. Customer, operations is a great example. Copilots, case summarization, knowledge-based answers, customer self-service, deflection, and improving service productivity. Marketing and sales is another significant area. Personalized contact, proposal, seller messaging, or campaigns. And we're also seeing a significant opportunities in software engineering, R&D, data analysis, and knowledge. Just as like Tad showed, a lot of those applications, we can start to talk to it and it's going to build it out. So whether if you're like, a citizen coder or like, know a lot more about it, we can leverage a lot of the AI to help us get to, a certain percentage the way done much quicker. Okay. But look at what happens as we move towards the right side. We no longer simplify, simply talking about AI helping someone perform an individual task. We're talking about, autonomous decision workflows and end-to-end processes autonomy. An AI agent doesn't simply summarize the case. It can understand the case, recommend next best actions, trigger the appropriate workflow, and monitor the outcome and escalate when human intervention is required. Love putting that in there because human in the loop is so critical. And that leads us to what I think is the most important concepts in the slide, right? Human plus agent plus robot work models. Humans aren't necessarily removed from the process. Their role is changing. People increasingly supervise, approve, manage exceptions, and make higher value decisions while agents are performing the digital work. And in certain environments, robotics handles the physical work as well. Ultimately, that creates the possibility of AI native business operations, where we're not simply adding AI to an existing process, we're redesigning the process around what AI makes possible. And that's a much bigger transformation. But getting from the left side to to the right side requires something organizations frequently underestimate, and that's readiness. So I do want to kind of close on this particular section with some industry benchmarks because they highlight an interesting contradiction in the AI market today. Because AI adoption is moving extremely quickly, but enterprise AI maturity and measurable business value aren't necessarily moving at the same speed. Across the research summarized here from McKinsey, Gartner, Forrester, IDC, Deloitte, and some other ones, we see some reoccurring themes. Organizations are adopting AI, but many are struggling with AI-ready data, employee readiness, adoption, integration into existing workflows, and demonstrating tangible business value. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons organizations should take away from the last few years. The AI model itself is rarely, the entire solution. You need the right data. You need integration into the business process. You need governance and security. Employees have to actually adopt it. And most importantly, you need a clearly defined business outcome that you can measure. So when organizations ask me, how do we become an AI first organization? I wouldn't start by asking, which AI model they should deploy. I start with 4 questions. Is your data ready? Is your workforce ready? Have we identified the right use cases? Can we prove the business value? Because those are the recurring signals we are seeing across the research on this slide. And that's the real central message I want everyone to take away with. The winners in enterprise AI won't necessarily be the organizations that deploy the most AI. They'll be the organizations that consistently turn AI into measurable business outcomes at scale. Before we wrap up, I wanted to thank everyone for taking their time to join us today, and to our speakers. We really appreciate your participation and hope you found the discussion very valuable. We'll be sending out a recording of today's webinar, so you have the opportunity to revisit and kind of like, share the content throughout your teams. We'd also welcome the opportunity to continue the conversation, learn more about your organization's priorities, and explore how the Microsoft AI agents can help you deliver real business outcomes. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward in connecting with you very soon. Thank you, everybody.